Good morning, everyone. Kevin here from Skywatcher, and welcome to another episode of the What's Up Webcast. We do this every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, right here at the Skywatcher USA YouTube channel. Of course, we appreciate all of you being here. It is October 6th, 2023 at the recording of this episode. The What's Up Webcast is normally live, but all of our episodes are recorded as well if you want to go back and review anything that you might see. Because we have years of content at this point. We're almost to episode 200, which is actually kind of exciting. We'll have to do something special coming up for that. All right, so this week we're checking up what's up in the nighttime sky for the month of October. On the What's Up Webcast, we check out everything from what's up in the nighttime sky to equipment to helpful tips and tricks for observing and imaging. And of course, at the end of the month, we have a special guest on to talk about their specialty in the field of astronomy. If you like what you see here, please go ahead and subscribe and leave a like on a video. We're almost to 10,000 subscribers, so if you guys could help us get to that, that would really be appreciated because we're almost there. Tell your friends. If you have an episode that and title it What's Up, and let us know your idea for an episode because we are starting to get ideas for 2024. So send that over if you have some ideas. If you want to know how to keep up with what's going on, you can head over to skywatchusa.com. Up at the top, you can hit subscribe and save and hop on to our email list. And you can see what's going on there as well. Real quick, I needed one more window open. Let me get this going. There we go. By the way, there are sales going on equipment right now. You can actually get Star Adventures on sale. These are fantastic little mounts for nightscape photography or the eclipses coming up. We are just over a week away from the Annular eclipse on October 14th. So if you need a tracking mount to go with you, the Star Adventures are on sale, and you can get them pretty quickly, but you are now within a week. So I wouldn't say anything is guaranteed at this point, unless you can go get it quickly. But Star Adventures are on sale right now. And then, of course, we still have our Jumbo Shrimp sale going on while supplies last. These are the Evo Lux refractors and some of our Star Adventure heads as well. So a lot of stuff going on, but yeah, and then keep an eye because there might be some cool holiday stuff coming. So, but you can go over to skywatchusa.com. There's subscribe and save right up there, and that's how you can get on our email list. Of course, if you want to support the channel a little bit more, I should have brought that up. There we go. You can head over to skywatcher.threadless.com. That's our Threadless store. And we've got all kinds of cool swag to go with your Skywatcher stuff. You can even pack these in with the holidays being right around the corner. They're kind of a cool stocking stuffer if you're looking for something to go along with your Skywatcher gear. But all of this goes to supporting the channel and lets us know we should keep it going. So head on over there and check it out. We definitely appreciate it. Like I said before, the annular eclipse, which we're going to be talking about quite a bit today, is next Saturday, October 14th. If you are in Phoenix and you want something to do, you can come on out to Seoul. We'll be doing a partial eclipse viewing there. It's about 87%, I think, is the setup for that. But if you want to come check that out, you can come join us. If you want to set up equipment with us, please email me. You can, all the contact information's on here. But come on out. Open to friends and family, and then if you've got equipment that you want to bring, more the merrier, but you need to email us and our team to let us know that you're coming so we know that there is space and parking and we know who's coming. So anyway, that's next week. We'll talk more about that. So let's get started. So the brightest thing in the nighttime sky, of course, is the moon, and new moon is on October 14th because that's when eclipses happen. The dark sky weekend is going to be the 14th and the 15th, and this didn't fix itself. That's going to drive me nuts. But October 14th is, which is next Saturday, is new moon. And then, of course, Saturday and Sunday, maybe you're getting out to some dark skies while watching the eclipse. Good for you. Full moon is October 28th, and the full moon of October is generally known as the hunter's moon, and this is the best time to go hunting and prepare for winter, as many of those animals are all fattened up from a very big summer of eating, and that's generally why the full moon for October is known as the hunter's moon, before we start getting into the deep autumn months and into winter as we move into December in a couple months. But that is the full moon for October, is the hunter's moon. Now, planets, if you haven't been out recently, Saturn is really the prime time object right now. It's rising from the east just after sunset. It's already pretty high after sunset. Right now it's at an altitude of 28 degrees, at least from where I'm at. So, but Saturn is a great position right now for viewing. I've been out a few times the last week using this 7-inch refractor I just picked up, and Saturn's looking great. So don't be afraid to push some magnification on it. You want probably about 100 power when observing planets to get the image scale up. So if you're using shorter focal length refractors and short focal length optics, you might need some high power stuff. I just had to pick up a 3mm to push the power up on some of these, but that's what those high power eyepieces are for, like 7, 5, 4, 3, you know, depends on what you're using. But if you've got good seeing and the scope is good to go, don't be afraid to throw some magnification on there and really get a good view of Saturn. So Saturn's looking good right now. But as the month goes on and the evenings get later, particularly right now, we have Jupiter rising. Right now, it's right around 9 o'clock is when Jupiter is making its appearance in the early parts of the month. But as we get towards the end of the month, we'll start scooting up and up as both of them get higher and higher into the sky. And the nice thing about, because you can actually see right here, Uranus is coming up. Nope, I don't want Jupiter. Uranus is following not far after Jupiter. Uranus is a fun one to look at, just this little blue ball. But it's actually cool to actually see that it's a planet. Neptune's a bit more difficult, but Neptune's also up as well, right there. So Saturn's there, Jupiter's here, Neptune's over here. Like I said, Neptune is cool to show people. It can be a bit tricky to find, so if you have a go-to telescope, that's always helpful. But you're going to want some magnification when observing Neptune because it's very small because of how far out it is. But it looks like this little blue ball. But Uranus, I like a little bit more because it's much more pronounced. It is much easier to see that it is, in fact, a planet in the star field. It looks like this very pale blue little ball, like a Tiffany blue almost. But it's pretty cool to see because it actually does stand out that it is, in fact, a planet rather than something stellar, where Neptune is getting so far out that in order to really see it, you're going to need some magnification on it. But the two big planets up right now are Saturn and then, of course, Jupiter. And then as we get to Halloween, there's going to be a pretty cool conjunction right here. Very bright moon and Jupiter will be together on the 28th of October. And does it do a little thing with Saturn? Not really. Saturn and the moon will be close on the 23rd, but it's nothing particularly fancy. But on the 28th, you'll have this really cool near conjunction of the moon and Jupiter as we squeak over to full moon. And then on Halloween night, Halloween is a great holiday for astronomy because you can actually set your equipment up for trick-or-treaters. Instead of them ringing your doorbell all night, ding, 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 you can just have them look through the telescope and you can share that with them. But for Halloween night, we will have Saturn, we will have Jupiter, and the moon will just be rising right around 8 o'clock. Is that right? Guess that would be right. But yeah, you'll be getting the moon there as well later in the evening. So if you've got some trick-or-treaters, running around by 9 o'clock, which is getting kind of late for a school night, but whatever. But the moon will make its appearance later in the evening. But if you're going to be setting up for Halloween, we've got some good stuff. Saturn and Jupiter are going to be well placed for Halloween if you're going to go out and share astronomy with trick-or-treaters. So I highly recommend it and show people what our hobby is all about. But yeah, at this point, Saturn and Jupiter are back in the sky in the month of October. Neptune's floating up there, and then we are getting Uranus, which is kind of trailing behind Jupiter right now. But those are your planets for the month of October. And then, of course, the moon is doing its thing as well. The sun. So the sun, of course, is always doing something fun. The activity is constantly changing. If you want to go see what is going on the sun, you can Google Gong H alpha, Gong space H alpha. And you are looking for this one right here, the Gong H alpha database. And this is pretty up to date. You can see there's a lot of cool stuff happening up there. Tons of filaments, some really nice active regions, some good prominences. So if you have an H alpha solar telescope, it's looking good right now. There's a lot of activity going on. I should probably, let me check out what's going on white light, because I always forget. Now in white light, because most of us have a white light filter. If you don't have a white light filter, they come in a couple of different styles. Here's a glass filters. This is for the Esprit 100. This one is from Spectrum Telescopes. They make really nice filters. You can also get the, black polymer filters. This one's for a camera lens. There's a black polymer filter. These are relatively cheap. I don't like black polymer too much. I just don't like the orange cast that it gives on the sun. It's just, I don't like the look of it. The glass filters are nice. The Herschel wedge for a refractor owner is my personal favorite. Do I have my other filter? Oh yeah, here we go. I knew I had a stack of them here. And then photographically, if you're going to be shooting the eclipse, which we're going to be talking about, you can get one of these Nisi ND 100,000s. These are photographic only, but they're really well built. They've got some good metal cell that's knurled, so it's easy to grip, and it does a really nice job on the sun, but that's for white light work. So anyway, you can see right now that the sun's got a lot going on. This is a really nice chain of sunspots, almost like an atoll, if you will. Really nice chain. You've got 34, 51, and 52. There's some good stuff going on there. And then if you apply that to the H alpha, you can see that's probably about where we're looking at the moment. So there's a lot of dynamics in that particular region going on. And then there's some scattered stuff around there as well. No major sunspots at the moment, but there's some going on there, which should be really good for the annular eclipse. The annular eclipse is actually next Saturday, October 14th. This is a warm-up for April 8th, the total solar eclipse next year. So an annular eclipse, and we've done episodes on types of eclipses. You can go back and watch it. An annular eclipse is where the moon is a little bit smaller and it glides in front of the sun, and during its maximum eclipse produces what's called the ring of fire. So you have the moon, which is a bit smaller than the disk of the sun, and then just a little lip of the sun visible around the moon. So they call that the ring of fire. And you have to be on the path to see the ring of fire. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But for the rest of most of North America and some of South America, it is going to be a very deep partial eclipse. And a partial eclipse is what you see here, where just a little chunk of the moon is covering up the sun. Now, like I said, this will be a fairly deep eclipse for most of North America. I know here in the Phoenix, Arizona area, we're looking about 87% coverage, which is pretty decent. That's enough to where you will notice the temperature starts to change a little bit and the colors and things become a little bit more muted because enough of the sun is being blocked. But one thing that I have to say is that this eclipse requires solar filters during the entire time. The only eclipse that you can observe without filters is a total solar eclipse during totality. And you really need to pay attention to what you're doing. So we will probably be doing an episode as we get closer to the April 8th total solar eclipse about the logistics of doing something like that. But for this eclipse next weekend, you have to have a solar filter the entire time. It will not get dark outside. There will always be a portion of the sun visible, and you need filters. So make sure you are getting the appropriate filters or have them. We're a week away, and if you don't have a filter by now, there's a good chance you're not going to get it, because the companies that make these things are getting these things out as fast as possible, and quite honestly, you've had enough time to get it. Don't wait till the last minute. Don't be that person who's on the phone with these companies and they're all upset because you decided to wait. So this is October 14th, 2023. It's an annular, also known as the Ring of Fire. It's partial everywhere else unless you're on the path. And you need to make sure you know where you're observing from. And it's good to practice ahead of time. So this week, if you've got clear skies, or even this weekend is even better, make sure you're testing the setup that you're going to use. Make sure you know how the mount needs to work. Make sure your filters fit properly. Start playing with exposure times and fields of view. This is the time that you want to start really implementing how your equipment is all going to work, because come next Saturday, you need to make sure everything's running. Don't wait till the last minute. I have met countless people that have waited till the last minute and something goes wrong. There's already a lot that can go wrong with telescope equipment because there's so many moving parts that have to work correctly. So it's important that you spend this coming week, or better yet, this weekend, really dialing in your setups and making sure you know what you're doing. So come next week, you're not stressing out and you're not freaking out and having people having to stop to help you. Now, if you don't really know about where and how to do it, go over to timeanddate.com. This is my favorite website for this. And they have, here's the home page. So timeanddate.com. They've got a bunch of stuff on there. But go to sun, moon, and space. And then down here you see October 14th annular eclipse. And it'll take you to this webpage. And it has a nice video that kind of shows how it's going to work. But what I like about this is the interactive eclipse map. Now, if you are in this shaded area, anywhere in the shaded area, you will get some portion of the eclipse. As you get into the darker shaded areas, you're getting a heavier annular or partial eclipse. The path, this dark red area, that is the actual path of the eclipse. If you are within this red band, you will get the Ring of Fire to some extent. If you're on the center, that dotted line, if you're on the center line, you'll get perfectly centered under the Ring of Fire. So what I like about this is it's interactive. So our friends in Albuquerque, we're going to go ahead and click there. You can see right here that this is basically what you're going to get. You're going to get the whole Ring of Fire to be nicely centered and look good. I know a ton of people are going to Albuquerque. This is the second time Albuquerque in New Mexico has gotten a Ring of Fire or annular eclipse in the last decade. Roughly. I think it was 2013. I don't remember when the other one was, but it was a while ago. But they're right on the center line. I know a lot of people here in Arizona are actually going out there. So what interval would you recommend to put together a good time lapse? Every 30 seconds, every 60 seconds? The whole thing is about 3 hours long. I don't know why the audio is lagging. We'll look into that. So sorry about that. I'm not sure why it's lagging because we haven't changed any settings, but we'll look into that. As far as time lapse goes, I've never done a solar time lapse, but the more frames you have, the smoother it's going to be. So every 30 seconds would probably be a lot smoother time lapse than every 60 seconds. But yeah, so if it's 3 hours long, 3 times, that's 100. So if it's 3 hours long and you're doing every 60 seconds, that's 180 frames. And then if you're doing that at the standard 24 frames per second, your time lapse is going to be 7.5 seconds long. Now, if you did it every 30 seconds, now you're doing that twice as much. So that's 360 frames. And if you divide that by the 20, that's 15 seconds. So personally, I would probably do every 30 seconds to give you a much smoother video time lapse. But it's up to you. Make sure you have a well-charged battery or good power. And then make sure you also have a big memory card to stitch all that together. So just make sure you are aware of what you need to do. That would be a good thing to actually try this weekend. Is obviously you're not going to see any movement, but set up your equipment. Make sure your mount and everything is tracking accurately. And then just set up the time lapse to test it out. But if it were me, I'd probably do every 30 seconds because I like the time lapses to be very smooth. And then if you want it to be video quality, which is about 24 frames per second, 30 seconds would be, you have more frames to work with. But yeah, so here is the eclipse. Can I make this? There we go. So this obviously is home, United States, North America, and our friends up in Canada, Mexico, and South America. What I like about time and date is that you can go anywhere and click wherever you want. So let's say you're in Sacramento, just click there. You can actually get pretty accurate with your location. And there you go. It shows exactly what this is going to look like. So there's first contact. It's also going to give you all the times. So there's how the sun is going to, let me make this full frame. That's how that's going to work. That's the deep partial that you're going to get. And then we're going to move out. And then there you go. And that's kind of the time-lapse look that you're going to want. You're going to want something like that. So the more frames that you're shooting, the smoother that video is going to look. So, but if you're in Albuquerque, for example, if I could get everything to listen to me, there we go. On the center line, let me open this. So this is a true annular eclipse. So there's first contact. Then we move into a deep partial. There's second contact. That's full eclipse start. There is the ring of fire right there. Then it moves out. Third contact. And then the disk of the sun continues to move away, going back into those partial phases. And then later in the eclipse, you're going to get fourth contact. That's where the moon leaves and the eclipse is over. So that is basically what you're going to be looking for. So good luck to everyone doing that. But you can go over to time and date, .com. I just don't know why I closed that. There it is. You can go to time and date. And if you need to know what you're going to be doing, or you want to know the times, just go ahead and click it somewhere, you know, like wherever. And at this point, there you go. Right down below the animation for your location, it'll tell you when it begins, when maximum is, and when the eclipse ends. So there's all your information that you're going to need to know. It also tells you the altitude of everything. It's very, very helpful if you're trying to plan this out and get a whole thing. And if, like I said, if you're in Phoenix and you want to come out and do an event, Seoul is happening. I know we're going to have at least 6 to 8 setups. We'll have H alpha, we'll have white light, all of that will be available there. You can come out and just check out different filters as well if you're curious about what white light looks like on various apertures. If you want to see hydrogen alpha, like double stack, single stack, we'll have multiple apertures of H alpha available. We'll have the LUNT 40 double stack will be out there, a LUNT 60 double stack, LUNT 100s. We will be demoing some of the Skywatcher stuff like the Esprit 150 and 100s will be there. We'll have one of the few Stellar View 180 7-inch triplets will now be out there on display. We'll have the EQ8Rs, AZ EQ5 and 6. So it's a cool outreach event. You get to see the eclipse, but you get a fleet of equipment to check out as well. So you can come ask questions, check it all out, have a good time. But all of that will be available there. If you want to know more, if you're going to be in the Phoenix area, come on out to that. If you're not in this area, check with your local science center. A lot of places, including the Arizona Science Center here, is doing something. But check around, or you can just do it from your yard or go do something with your friends. Whatever is easier for you. But please make sure, A, that you have the appropriate filter. Do not use welding glass. Don't stack ND filters. I know Nisi right now for these ND 100,000s is doing free second day air, I think. You have to go to their website, but they're doing second day air shipping for these Nisi ND 100,000. So if you need one for your camera lenses, they're doing rush shipping for these right now, and they're very high quality, and the color on them is really good too. It doesn't make it orangey, burnt orange. There's actually some nice resolution with it. If you are using telephoto lenses, I would recommend at least 300 millimeter. 400 or longer is better, so you get the image scale up. And then if you need more, you can use a telescope. So, but that is the big event going on this month, is the annular eclipse. So good luck to you. We will have our friend Simon back on next Friday to be talking about all things solar. The day before the eclipse, we're going to be getting into the nitty gritty of some filters and some tech. But yeah, hope you can come on out and check it out. All right, meteor showers. The big meteor shower for the month is the Orionids. This takes place on the 21st and 22nd. It should be pretty decent because, no, we'll have a bright moon, actually, because full moon is the 28th. So, yeah, it's not well placed right now, but you're looking about 15 to 25 per hour. And it's best viewed, as most meteor showers are best from or after midnight. So that's the main meteor shower for the month, is the Orionids, October 21st and 22nd. We are creeping into full moon on the 28th, so we will have a bright moon to contend with during those times. So comets. There are a few comets flying around, and that's the other window that I did not load. I knew there was another one. Comet. I like to use a website called cometchasing.skyhound.com. So this is a list of all the major comets that are currently visible right now. And the reason I like this website, it gives you all kinds of good details on it, especially when to peak. But there's been some very cool comets that have been around lately. Nothing that's been really bright enough to really become naked eye. This one right here, C2023 P1, was getting close, and there was some digital camera shots that looked pretty good, but it never quite peaked to naked eye capability, and it was really low in the horizon, so it was hard to get. But if you want to know what's going on in the comet world, this is the best website for it. And if you go further down, it's going to break the major comets up and tell you what's visible. Like this one, 2P Inky, is currently, it's at 8.9 magnitude, which is actually pretty good. So that's easily obtainable in nearly any telescope at this point. And it's well placed, but it's an early morning comet, it looks like. But we are going to lose it as we get later in the month. So that's something that you'll want to be checking out, is the comets, and keeping an eye on some of them. But if you want to know more details, you can go to cometchasing.skyhound.com. they're going to give you all kinds of information on here about which comets are interesting and which ones to keep an eye on in case one of them flares and you get something cool. So that's the website I use. I always recommend it. And then what is nice about this is if you want to know more, like we'll just go with 2P Inky, you can click on Finder Charts, and it's going through Leo right now. So you can see which direction it's going in the sky and if it's going to line up with any particular object, because that's always kind of cool when you can get a comet in the foreground of like a galaxy or a nebula or something like that, and it becomes kind of one of those Kodak moments, if you will, and you can get a cool picture of that. So there's some cool stuff right there, but I go to this website to help me kind of navigate which comets are interesting, and then you can go to Sky Safari and stuff like that to really find it. But that is cometchasing.skyhound.com. That's my favorite website for comets. Deep Sky. There's a lot of stuff up right now. I could spend probably a whole hour or more on Deep Sky targets. We are officially in autumn, but there is still the summer constellations that are up right now. Like just after it gets dark, you still have Cygnus hanging out there. The summer triangle is still visible with Vega, Deneb, and Altair. So there's a bunch of nebulas hanging out up there with Cygnus. Scorpius and Sagittarius are pretty much gone by mid-evening. Ophiuchus is still hanging out there. Hercules is still visible, especially if you're doing outreach events. The Hercules star cluster is still hanging out up there in the early evening. But Cygnus will be visible for another month or so in a good position. And with that being said, right next to Cygnus is Vulpecca, which is the home of M27, the Dumbbell Nebula. This is a great nebula to image with and even observe. Really, any telescope can get it, but, you know, probably a 6-inch or larger telescope is where things get interesting. And if you want to help pop it out a little bit more, I recommend like a UHC, Ultra High Contrast Filter, or O3. Those are going to be your main go-to filters for observing most nebulas, a UHC or an O3, because most nebulas emit light in the O3 and hydrogen, particularly hydrogen beta and alpha, and the UHC allows that to come through. Imaging wise, the Dumbbell is a walk in the park. You can do it in town, you can do it in dark skies. It looks good in one-shot color, it looks good in monochrome and narrowband. It's really just kind of pick your poison at that point. This is a one-shot color shot. It looks perfectly fine. But you can get really fancy with it, particularly if you're doing like O3 narrowband. You can bring out those oxygen 3 wings that are on the outer edge of there. That was our first totem target, was the O3 wings, or one of our first totem targets was the O3 wings of M27. But it's a great object visually and imaging wise. You can do it in town, out of town. If you're going to a dark sky site, throwing some aperture on this thing is awesome. If you've got a friend who's got a big scope, have them throw it on this. It's cool to just see all the detail that's visible in this planetary nebula. But that's M27, the Dumbbell. Always a good object. Next one, if you're a wide field person and you're looking to shoot something big, you have NGC 7000, the North American Nebula. This is up in Cygnus, just off the bright star Deneb. You're going to need a really big chunk of sky to get the whole thing. It's about 3 degrees. Now, from a dark sky visually, this isn't too difficult. And you can see it in like a 3 or 4 inch telescope. But the trick here would really be to use like a UHC or an O3, or you could even try an H beta, because a lot of this particular region is hydrogen. So obviously our eyes can't see H alpha, it's too far in the red, but they can see H beta. So you can go over there and check all that out if you want. But this is a great object. It's, like I said, it's very large. If you put more aperture on it, you can get more detail, but it's harder to get encompass the entire nebula. Imaging wise, you really are going to want something really wide for this. I know a lot of people shoot this with like the red cats, You could do this with like our shorter focal length Esprits, like the 100 and the 80. But usually small refractors or even short focal length telephoto lenses, particularly like those 200 or 135 lenses, do a very nice job with this region. And there's a ton of nebulosity around the area as well. Now, because this is an emission target, it means you can use narrowband filters like H alpha. This is a monochrome shot from the middle of Phoenix with H alpha and a Canon 200mm lens. Obviously, it does a very nice job, but you could easily do this from home with narrowband filters with one-shot color or monochrome. Just depends on what it is, but it reacts very well to the narrowband filters if you want to do that. Of course, if you want to do more traditional, then you'll have to deal with the moon and light pollution and stuff like that, but that's a great target to go after. We are losing a chunk of these, but the Palomar clusters are still a viable collection of clusters at this time of year. But some of them do reside in Sagittarius, so you're going to start losing ones like Palomar 8 and those in there. But there's other ones that are floating around as well. But you can generally get a good chunk of these in the fall months that we're in. They are very small, they're diffuse, and very challenging visually. You're going to need a fairly large instrument to be able to catch all 15 of them. Probably a 20-inch or larger. And some of the more difficult ones, like Palomar 13, are even difficult in like a 25-inch or 30-inch. So big glass for this stuff. Imaging, it shouldn't be too difficult. The problem is with some of these, they're very small and diffuse, so it can be hard to actually know that it's there. So these are more of a challenging object, but the nice thing is they're clusters. They're not affected really by light pollution too much. And the cameras can actually bring it out pretty well. Try using like an L Pro filter or a Chroma Low Glow, like the light pollution filters. They'll help kind of bring out the contrast and pop it out. Dark skies, of course, will help make that a lot easier. But you can do clusters like this from in town with the appropriate filters. But if you want to make it easier, imaging-wise, then darker skies and longer focal length, because you want to get that image scale up. M15 is a very prominent globular cluster that's visible right now. It's just off the head of Pegasus, about 35,000 light years away. It does do well in town. It's very impressive in dark skies. It's a little bit smaller and more dense than M13 is in Hercules. But it's a good cluster to go with, especially if you've got like a 10-inch or larger telescope. It becomes a pretty easy object for like outreach or just observing in the backyard. It's a good cluster to go with. Imaging-wise, globulars are very forgiving because they're clusters. They don't have a lot of diffuse detail that gets wiped out by light pollution. So imaging one of these from the backyard, a globular cluster, imaging that from the backyard or dark skies does well. Now, the thing about M15 is it sits in this area where there is also a lot of this integrated flux nebula, which is this grayish cirrus clouds that are in the particular region. This was taken from our remote observatory at Skies Away Remote with the Esprit 150, and this was with the one-shot color camera, and I was actually really surprised to see the integrated flux nebula, but that's just because of how good these cameras are nowadays. But M15 is a very easy object to image, and then the challenge in this particular frame is getting that integrated flux nebula to come out. But if you just want to shoot the cluster, it's not a difficult target to do from town. And, you can really work with it because you're basically just shooting a stellar object. There's nothing diffuse to worry about. Of course, the big thing for this month is M31, the Andromeda Galaxy, 2.5 million light years away. Another easy one. From a light polluted location visually, you're probably just going to get the glowing core of M31. And you'll see M32, which is this one up here, and M110 down here. But in darker skies, you'll actually be able to start seeing some of the detail, particularly these darkened bands right here. You'll be able to see some of the dust bands a little bit more prominently from darker skies, especially with larger apertures. That was the big thing when I jumped from a 10-inch Dob to a 16-inch Dob. The first thing I noticed was just how much detail is visible in the larger aperture, particularly in the dust bands. But dark skies are also helpful. And quite honestly, one of the best views of M31 I've ever had is like 50 millimeter binoculars from a dark sky site, because you truly get to see how much sky M31 actually covers. And it's pretty impressive. It does extend quite a bit out into space. So I highly recommend getting some binoculars if you're going to a dark sky site, and actually take a look at Andromeda. You'll be impressed with how just big the galaxy actually is. It's impressive. Imaging wise, Andromeda one-shot color cameras, monochrome's fine. There is a lot of H2 regions. These are star-forming regions that are mostly hydrogen that are sprinkled around the galaxy's arms. So adding some H alpha, if you have that monochrome camera, and blending it in there will help pop some of those details, and you'll get like these little red jewels looking things that are within the galaxy. I think this was also shot with our Esprit 150, and you can see it just doesn't quite get the whole galaxy. It does really well on it, but if you want to get the whole galaxy, you're going to need a bit wider field of view. This was the Esprit 150 native f7 with a 455 full frame. So you can even see at 1,000 millimeters with a full frame camera. It just doesn't get the whole thing. So you'd probably need a reducer, or probably shoot somewhere between up to about 800-ish millimeters with a full frame camera to get the whole thing. And then if you still want to get the whole thing and you don't have the full frame camera, you can go to the shorter focal lengths like 500, 600, 400, whatever you want to use to frame it up. Now, there is a lot of hydrogen in this region too. These like hydrogen cirrus clouds. They're very faint, but if you want to add a little bit of detail to your Andromeda image, spend some time, especially if you're doing wide field, spend some time doing hydrogen alpha filters in there to help pop some of that detail out. And speaking of filters, I suggest, this comes from Steve, I suggested this a few years ago and was never done, so asking again, do a show on filters and what filter to use on, say, a nebula or a galaxy. We actually have done episodes on filters. It might be time to do an update on those filters because there are new filters out there, but we have done episodes covering filters and when to use them for both the visual and the imaging aspects. So you can actually go back. Episode 36 and 37. But it sounds like we should probably revamp those episodes because, again, there are new filters since we've did that. We're on episode 170-something right now. That was 36 and 37. So over 100 episodes ago is when we did that. So we might need to revamp and refresh some of that stuff for next year. If you're looking for a little bit more of a challenge, but still doable from the backyard with the appropriate filters, you've got the Sharpless catalog, and this one's the Cave Nebula, Sharpless 155. This is in the constellation of Cepheus. Cepheus is probably my favorite constellation as an imager because there's so much dirt and dust and gas in that region that there's a lot of really cool targets in there, including the Totem episode or target that we did this for September, which we'll check out in a minute. The Sharpless 155 or the Cave Nebula, 2,400 light years away. Very dark skies for this. The only time I've actually seen this visually is with my 28-inch and the night vision with an H alpha filter. I have not tried it without night vision. I have to imagine it's pretty difficult to see, but with a decent size aperture scope and a night vision, it's doable, especially with a good H alpha filter. Imaging wise, this is an easier target, but the goal here is really using those narrow band filters. Like if you're doing one shot color, maybe like the Antlia dual band, the HA03 5 nanometer would be good. You have like the L enhance, stuff like that. And then if you're shooting monochrome, that works too. This is monochrome H alpha only, and you can just see how much detail and little dark wisps and stuff in there. But there's some cool stuff floating in the Cave Nebula, and you can actually do narrowband to colorize it if you want. but the Cave Nebula is a pretty good one. Now, one of my favorites, which is right in the middle of Cassiopeia, is IC 59 and 63. This is the ghost of Cassiopeia, or Gamma Cass Nebula, 610 light years away. This is doable visually. I find that decent aperture is good. Probably like a 10-inch or bigger. The best view I've seen of it was in a C14. And I actually think the longer focal lengths to get you more image scale is helpful. So if you have a C11 or a C14 or something that's got some aperture plus some focal length and a dark sky sight, this is actually something that's doable. And I found that no filter is probably better for this. And you want to make sure when it's placed high in the sky to get the best transparency. But I really like these nebulas. But imaging-wise, they're great nebulas. They're very reactive to H-alpha because they technically are emission nebulas, but there is some reflection in there from the bright Gamma Cass star right there in the field. Some of my favorite objects are actually dim objects that contrast with a bright star. I think that's kind of cool. So this is one of those. But this does good in one-shot color. LRGB, I actually find my favorite images are bicolor images, which do HA and O3. This is some H-alpha data that I had sitting around, but this works really well. If you're trying to shoot this from home, try shooting it in H-alpha and see if that brings it out if you've got a monochrome camera. Dark skies will be very helpful with this. Of course, dark skies, there's no excuse for any of it. Dark skies are always the best. But it's a cool, faint, little ghostly thing. Speaking of other faint little stuff, you have NGC 7023, the Iris Nebula. This is also up in Cepheus, about 1,300 light years away. This one is hard to see. Dark skies do help, but the only thing you're really going to see is the glowing core. Unless you've got some incredibly transparent dark skies, mostly high altitude locations. You might see some of the darker nebulosity floating in the field if you've got really good conditions. But imaging, it's a bit more of an imaging target. But this is a molecular cloud. So narrowband does not help you in this area at all. So this is something, if you're doing monochrome imaging, a really good luminance channel is going to be your secret for this one to really pop the detail out. And if you're doing one-shot color, just lots of exposure time because you want to bring out all the faint, wispy stuff that's hiding in there. Or do both. Do one-shot color with the deep luminance. And the luminance is really the trick here to bring that out. But this is not an emission target. It's reflection and dark nebula. So your narrowband filters will do nothing for you in this particular object. VDB141, the Ghost Nebula, also up in Cepheus. This is one of those dusty, dirty targets. This is actually not far from the Iris. If you had a wide enough field of view, I think you actually get both of them in the field because the Iris is not far from this. This is the Ghost Nebula. It's about 1,450 light years. Visually, you're talking really dark, really transparent skies and probably some serious aperture because this stuff is faint. It's a molecular cloud. There's not a lot you can do with it. And if you can see this, probably the one thing that you'd see is this bright portion that's backlit by one of the nearby stars. But it's Halloween season, so the Ghost Nebula is a good one. But Cepheus is filled with stuff like this. That's why I love that constellation. It's just cool with all kinds of this stuff. But these are all molecular clouds. These like brownish, really extended nebulas that are floating all around. And a lot of this actually goes from Cepheus all the way down to like Taurus and Perseus. There's all kinds of really cool nebulas floating around in there. But this is all dark sky targets. You really need to have some good skies. Transparency is very helpful because there's no filter that's going to help you here. You could try from the backyard and you could probably get it from the backyard. But the problem with shooting something like this from the backyard is how gradients from the local street lights are going to affect it. And gradients, when processing something this faint and diffuse, is going to be a mess and just wreck it. So this is a dark sky target. Of course, you have M33, which is not far from Andromeda. M31, it's in the constellation of Andromeda. Well, technically, it's the Triangulum galaxy, but I've heard it called the Triangulum, the Pinwheel, whatever. Actually, I think it is in the constellation of Triangulum. It's right on the border there, Triangulum and Andromeda. About 2.7 million light years, so just a little bit further than M31 is. This one's very diffuse, so dark skies and decent aperture are the trick for seeing this visually. It is not an in-town object. It's not as pronounced as Andromeda, the M31 galaxy is. This is way more diffuse in the arms. One-shot color works well. Monochrome works well. If you are doing monochrome, again, like M31, particularly M33's got better stuff, is it has a lot of those H2 regions, so don't be afraid to add some H-alpha. Here is a stacked set of H-alpha data from a monochrome camera, and you can see all those bright little chunks of hydrogen that are in there, and you can weave that into your color data, and then you get something like this, where you can see that those little pinkish details actually pop a little bit more. I gotta speed this up a bit. So target of the month, Totem. Everything is about shipped out at this point, so if you haven't gotten it, it's probably on the way, but we've shipped everything. But we are getting ready to do October. So the rules, of course, you have to be in the US or Canada. Sorry. We do need a raw or FIT file to go with it. We need the name, your name, equipment, image specifications, and then we are starting to share these up on our social media pages. We pick a handful of them and share them because a lot of times there's too many to share. But you can always go to the skywatcherusa.com website under media and find out the current totem target. This is the patch you're going to receive. We are excited to show you the 2024 patch in January, so keep an eye out for that. But the September 2023 target was the shark, also in Cepheus. And you guys did some pretty nice stuff. There was a lot of submissions this month, though. So thank you for everyone who was a part of it. But there were some really impressive ones. Like this one's really cool. Again, that really wide field of view is really kind of neat. But there's really nice stuff. You all did a really good job. Really cool galaxy in here if you got the field of view. But I definitely appreciate all of you. This was not an easy one to go after from light polluted skies because, again, it's those molecular clouds. But I'm surprised how well you guys were able to do a lot of this stuff. And this stuff is really challenging to process, too. This one's phenomenal, just with the structure and stuff in there. That's just really difficult to do. But Jason did a really cool job doing this. But again, you know, big chunk of sky. But every single one of you did a really nice job on it. And we, of course, always appreciate you guys being a part of Totem and supporting the channel. And, of course, we will be getting all of your patches out as soon as possible. So keep an eye out for it. We do ship them USPS, so you don't get a tracking number. They're usually first class mail. But yeah, thanks for everyone who did it. October. October's totem target is Male 2, or G1. This is the brightest globular cluster in Andromeda. It is small, so make sure you've got some focal length or some good image scale to go with it. You can see up at the top left there, that was shot with the EvoStar 150 ED, and it just looks like a little tiny triangle blown up. And then on the right there, you have the Hubble Space Telescope image. It looks like a miniature M13. So I'll be really curious. But if you've got longer focal length scopes, I'll be curious to see what you can do with this and see how much you can resolve. I'm trying to get some high resolution images for ourselves so I can show you guys at the end of the month what the bigger scopes can do. But a 6-inch refractor can do it. This is actually a visual target too. It's not that difficult. It's like 12th or 13th magnitude, so you can do it in a 10 or 12-inch telescope. I've seen it in a C11, but it is small, so you need some magnification to pop it out. But it's a fun one to go after. So that is your totem target for the month of October, is May-all 2. If you don't know a lot about that, you can actually go over to a website that I have here. Oh, I closed it on accident. Well, anyway, Google the Atlas of the Andromeda Galaxy. There's a whole web page on it. And but if you really want to find it, you can go find the actual book, the Atlas of the Andromeda Galaxy book. These are really hard to find. You can get them on Astromart or Cloudy Nights if you can find someone who's willing to sell them. They're about 100 and change, but it's really cool because it actually shows you different charts from in the Andromeda Galaxy. This was all done at Kit Peak with the Andromeda Galaxy. They mapped the whole thing and all that fun stuff. So anyway, that is our totem target for October. So good luck. See you guys if you can see it. That's pretty much it for this episode. If you like what you see, please go ahead and subscribe. Leave a like on a video. If you have an idea for a future episode, email us at info@skywatcherusa.com and title it What's Up. You can get the What's Up webcast where you get all of your podcasts as well if you just want to hear the vocal side of it. Apple Music, Android, Spotify, it's wherever you get your podcast, you can see all that. So, but that's it for the October night skies. Next week, our buddy Simon Tang is back. We're going to be talking solar astrophotography and the eclipse. This is the Friday before the annular eclipse, and we're going to go into some nitty-gritty because we get a lot of questions about filters and how that works. So this is going to be good stuff. It's probably a little late, but if you want, but we'll be talking about how to shoot the eclipses, and then it's also going to be a really good refresher if you're trying to do the total eclipse. We'll go into that as well, because remember, the 14th is the first of 2 eclipses, so make sure you know what you're ready to do, because April 8th is going to be here before you know it, and that's the big one, the total eclipse. But we'll be talking about all that with our buddy Simon next week as well. So if you've got any questions on solar filters, that is the place to do it. That's pretty much it for this week. Thanks all for watching. We definitely appreciate you hanging out with us. Please leave a like on a video, subscribe, tell your friends, help us get to 10,000 subscribers. But clear skies to everyone out there. Get ready for the eclipse. Make sure you practice. Make sure you are using the right solar filters. And again, thanks for hanging out with us. Clear skies, and we'll see you guys next Friday. Take care, everyone. See ya.